everyone. Thank you for coming out. Hello. So welcome to the 7th and 8th grade debate. We're very excited today. They put in a lot of work to make this debate happen. So thank you for coming out and supporting all of their efforts. So as most of you know, they're going to be debating the resolution that parents should not allow children under 16 to access social media. We are defining social media as particularly social media platforms like Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, not just emailing or texting or other kind of just phone uses for communication, but particularly social media platforms. So over here we have the affirmative side, which is going to be arguing for the resolution, and that's noted on the paper that you all have. And then over here is the negative team. They're going to be debating against the resolution. Just so you understand the flow, you have it in front of you, but just to explain, so each team will have an introduction to introduce what their basic arguments will be. The affirmative team is then going to start off, give us their 3 main points. After each main point, there will be a rebuttal from the negative team, where they'll get to respond and try and dismantle the argument. And then there will be a counter rebuttal from that same main point person to respond to some of those critiques and criticisms. And then the negative team will have the same opportunity to give their arguments. Both sets of arguments will be wrapped up with a summary. This year we're adding something a little bit different. In the past I've done an open dialogue after the presentation of both arguments, but this year we're going to do a cross-examination, which is a little bit different. So there's 2 cross-examiners who are going to get up, and they can ask whatever questions for a 3-minute time period to the main point presenters on the other team. So they can just kind of fire some questions at them, try to dig a little bit deeper if their rebuttals weren't able to kind of get enough out. And they have 3 minutes in which to engage in that dialogue. It is supposed to be conversational, so they're able to respectfully stop someone or ask or push a different question or change directions. But the whole point there is just try and draw out some more points from the other team. And then both teams will wrap up with a conclusion at the end. So at the very end, you all have a sheet that I gave to you. There are some extras back there, the sheets on that table back there, and also some pens. And if you have any comments, encouraging comments, or just responses in general to what people did well or could work on, you can put those in. I'm just going to use those at the end. I'll look over them and add some of that to my feedback to the students. This audience said these things about the presentation. And then at the end, you'll use that sheet for voting. So we will have an audience vote at the end. That does not determine the winner of the debate, but it's the popular vote. So you can turn that in. The front side of it is all the affirmative team's arguments, and the back side is the negative. So if you just want to, probably on the front side, if you just either write affirmative or negative in terms of which one you think won, affirmative or negative, then I can go through really quickly and count those up, tally them at the end of the debate. So thank you so much again for coming out. I'm going to start us off with a word of prayer, and then we're going to dive into our introductions. So let me pray for us. Lord Jesus, I thank you that you are a God of reason who has created logic and given it to us, given us rational minds with which to approach the world and to understand it more. Lord, I thank you that you are greater than our reason, that you are the creator of it, and Lord, I thank you that you allow us to use it for good purposes. And I pray that as we engage in this exercise today of debating, that you would help us to hone that gift of reason and to use it well. And I thank you so much for all of these students, the hard work that they've put in. I thank you for everyone who's come out to support them and encourage them. And I just pray that you would please bless their efforts and that you would give them confidence as they come up here and present and debate, and that you would help them to do an excellent job to the praise ultimately of your glory, that you would be honored by what happens here today. Lord, we thank you so much, and we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, I'm going to turn it over to the introduction. Sorry, just setting up my timer.
Good morning, thank you for coming. My name is Claire Melvin, and I will be introducing the arguments from the affirmative side. Let's begin. Imagine a world where everyone from 10 to 16 are on social media. Every night, their parents come into their room and take their phone to make sure they have good Christian posts on their social media. The kids are totally okay with this. Then they just move on with life. Well, that is the expectation. But the reality is, the kids don't want to give up their phone, ruining the trust bond between them and their parents. It is true that kids can use social media to communicate with faraway friends or family, but sometimes these uses aren't so innocent. They can be used for cyberbullying or posting or commenting inappropriate things to get more followers, more likes. And this is why my side will be arguing that why kids under 16 should not be permitted social media. First, Ezra will be arguing about dopamine, the hormone in the brain that releases chemicals that make you happy. This can make a distraction that goes into a dopamine loop, then makes you addicted to social media. Next, Maria will be arguing that how social media is not actually that social. Social media, this is a problem because it hurts the face-to-face interactions with your friends and your family, and it's just a time waster. Third, Anna will be arguing peer influence, how it can go to cyberbullying, then low self-esteem, and then even suicide. All of this will be centered around the idea of ideal versus reality. The ideal being the kid will give up their phone to their parents whenever they're asked, but the reality is the kid wants their privacy on it and is stubborn. In all of this, the cons outweigh all of the pros. The cons being it's not good for the kids and they just shouldn't use it, and then the pros being the kids should use it and it's good for them. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for listening. Good luck to both teams.
Hello, my name is Caleb, and I will be presenting the arguments for the negative case. According to a Pew Research Center survey done in 2018, 95% of teens have access to a smartphone, but 45% of those teens have at least one platform. With these stats, it shows that social media has a huge impact on teens. As the negative team, we believe that teens should be allowed access to social media because they're missing the benefits of it that, in this case, outweigh the negatives. First, teens should be allowed freedoms, but still with limitations. Parents should be involved, but not hover over their children. It creates a strong trust between the parents and their teenager. Second, it gives the teen a sense of community. It is a strong foundation and a place of support during tough times in their lives. They can exchange ideas and even make friends. They can contact and communicate with family members or friends that have moved away and might not see as often. Third, it prepares the teen for the future. They develop social skills that they need in real life that they might be struggling with or just lacking. They can learn to listen to other viewpoints, respectfully disagree to other opinions, and challenge other viewpoints. These are our arguments. We hope you vote for the negative case, and thank you for coming out today.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming out today. My name is Ezra, and today I'm going to be explaining why teens under 16 should not have social media, because first, their susceptibility to addiction, second, the effects of addiction, and third, ideally how parents would get involved with their social media, but in reality how they can't prevent addiction. With that, let's begin. First, teens are susceptible to addiction because of a chemical in the brain called dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical in the brain that makes you happy. Happiness is a good thing, and therefore, dopamine is a good thing. Dopamine is activated by cues. These cues are little signals that stimulate the brain, signaling it of a potential reward that's upcoming. In this instance, the cues would be little buzzes or dings of a social media notification. These cues can enter loops whenever they are inconsistent or persistent. And that is exactly what social media is. The notifications are inconsistent and persistent, causing addiction. Second, addiction causes impulsive behavior and hyperrationality. Impulsive behavior is when a thought turns into an action without further thought. Dopamine causes this because of the drive for the good feeling that comes from the social media notification. As Daniel Siegel put it in his article, Dopamine and the Teenage Logic, he says, If any notion turns immediately into an action without reflection, teens are living their lives all gas pedal and no brake. If teens are all gas pedal and no brake, they can make horrible decisions. I don't need a stat to tell you that teens are impulsive, so I would be fan the flame by giving them social media. And third, ideally parents would get involved, but in reality, they can't prevent addiction. Ideally, they would install an app or check their social media frequently to prevent addiction. But in reality, because of how much dopamine is in the teenage or adolescent brain, it's difficult to restrain the social media enough to prevent that addiction. And if they do install an app or check it enough to prevent that addiction, they're going to have to restrain social media so much that they might as well not have it at all. In conclusion, teens under 16 should not have social media because of, first, their susceptibility to addiction because of dopamine. Second, the effects of addiction is impulsivity and hyperrationality. And third, because parents cannot stop dopamine in teens. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Sarah and I will be doing the rebuttal to Ezra's 3 main points that are: dopamine negatively affects your attention span, teens are susceptible to addiction, and it makes teens impulsive. First, as an article from Brain MD Health states, dopamine, often called the motivation molecule, provides the drive and focus you need to be productive. To clarify, with a healthy amount, dopamine is dire to your focus, so that you do not get distracted. Other extensive research from harvard.edu and headspace.com also proves this. Yet, lack of dopamine may cause distraction or lack of attention, if that is what he meant. We are not distracted by dopamine, but the content on the screen, causing the dopamic release. If not careful, this does keep us at risk for dopamine loops. And that brings me to my second point. Ezra said, dopamine causes addiction. I will acknowledge that dopamine causes pleasure and activates the reward center of the brain, and the loop may result in addiction. But this is exactly why we need to limit time spent on social media. Only use it for productive and beneficial things, and there are apps to help you do so, such as Off Time, Moment, Flipped, which all limit screen time. And this is a useful tool that needs to be established at the beginning to prevent these loops. The Bible calls us to have self-control, and we need to listen to what he asks of us and practice controlling the urges that may arise. And my third point, Ezra stated that dopamine is the cause of impulsiveness in teens. Being impulsive is a personality trait, and it is predisposed, which means a genetic characteristic influencing your development. And dopamine does not make people impulsive. It can heighten impulsivity. Yet there are many methods to help with the impulsiveness to teens to lower their impulsivity, such as being mindful, talking yourself through the process, and talking to it with a parent or a guardian. Social media is so beneficial in moderation and can be reached without addiction or impulse with a little bit of self-control. And I would also like to ask, why 16? Does dopamine just stop affecting people when they turn 16? Why should someone 20 have social media if the risk of dopamic effects are still prevalent? Please explain. That is all.
Again, thank you for coming out. My name is still Ezra, and I'm going to be responding to Sarah's points. She started out by saying that dopamine helps teens drive and focus. And that you need to have a healthy amount of dopamine in teens, and that's what causes them to focus. But teens aren't going to be careful with social media. They aren't going to be careful with the amount of dopamine impulses that they get. And again, dopamine does help the brain focus, but dopamine helps the brain focus on the things that the dopamine likes, like those social media notifications. And you said that dopamine, whenever you're lacking dopamine, is a bad thing. Social media is not the only source of dopamine for teens. I mean, you can get happiness from a lot of other things. And second, you said you need to limit the dopamine intake. And you said that you also need to use it for only productive things. And that's how you become mature and responsible with social media. I don't know about you, but teens aren't going to be, again, careful and wanting to be using social media for productive things. They want to use social media to interact with friends and see cool things and have fun. They aren't going to be productive thinking about the future. And third, you say impulsivity is a personality trait. And this isn't coming from some scummy 14-year-old. This is coming from, again, Daniel Siegel from his article, Dopamine and Teenage Logic. He says, quote, "The brain increased drive for reward in adolescence manifests lies in teens. From dopamine, this increases impulsivity." So, and Daniel Siegel is, if I'm correct, a professor of psychiatry at UCLA. So he's a reliable source disagreeing with you. That's it. I hope that those 3 points help you to vote for the affirmative team. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Maria Enriquez, and today I will be arguing for the affirmative side of how social media makes you less social. First, it hurts your face-to-face interactions. Second, it hurts your family life. And third, it is a massive time waster. Let's begin. First, since the rising of social media in the early 2000s, studies from the website Free Range noticed that kids from the age of 12 to 19, or 8th grade to 12th grade, have been significantly dropping in time with friends, which they instead spend on social media. As we are advancing in technology, it's going to become harder to train our minds to interact face-to-face, not screen-to-screen. If we continue staying trapped inside with social media, face-to-face interactions could become replaced by screen-to-screen interaction because our minds are being trained it's simpler, but in reality, it's just making us more antisocial since we're not hanging out with our friends. Second, I'm sure some parents in this crowd have or had a teenager who only seems to stay inside on their phone, in their room, on social media. This is basically isolating themselves, and it's a constant problem, and it's breaking relationships between their parents and the siblings and all relatives. Frank Fiorelli, in an article called How the Internet is Changing Culture, introduced an idea called bedroom culture. This, in its simplest meaning, means staying in your room and not out socializing with your friends. This ties into my first point about antisocialness. Third and finally, social media is probably the biggest time waster out there. Have you ever been doing homework or work in general, and after you finish one problem, you feel the necessity to go check your phone for every single message from Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, etc.? Or maybe you try to take a 5-minute break, but it turns to a 40-minute break because you lose track of time. Dopamine, as Ezra just defined, is the section of the brain that makes us happy, but can also lead to addiction. Because of this, time is definitely one of the hardest things to control about social media because addiction is extremely hard to break. Today I was arguing for the affirmative side that social media actually makes you less social. In that, first, it hurts your face-to-face interaction, it hurts your family life, and it is a time waster. Thank you for coming, and on the weight of these arguments, I hope you vote for the affirmative side. Thank you.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Leo McKinley. Thank you all for coming out on this lovely afternoon, and I will be countering Maria's argument. First, you said social media is beginning to replace face-to-face interaction. However, social media only supplements it and not replaces it. According to Frank Fiorelli, a survey done in the UK said that most kids would rather play outside with their friends than talk online. And parents enforce this bedroom culture in fear of the outside world. So that way, so it's actually the parents fearing that the predator's outside, so they'll keep the kids inside, and so they can still talk to their friends while being safe from anyone driving a white van that says, "Hey kids, you want some free candy?" Also, when kids do go outside, skills learned from talking on social media can actually improve interaction. You also briefly talked about how it could lower family bonds. However, families should have rules about this topic, such as not having devices during family gatherings or at the dinner table. And also, social media may be the only options for family members living in different states or countries. Lastly, you talked about how social media is a huge time waster. However, even without social media, there are plenty of other, arguably more effective ways to waste time, such as YouTube or TV. In conclusion, I believe that it's called social media for a reason. Thank you. That is all.
Hello, my name is Maria, again. So, I'll be going against Leo's rebuttal, and yeah, let's begin. So, he's brought up that it keeps you inside. Oh, well, you have to be kept inside because of the predators out there, but most of teens are being kept inside because they just are being inside, and there are other reasons, but they're being kept inside by addiction, which ties into my points. So, yeah, it brings up addiction again, and how even if you're inside and because you have to be, you're still getting addicted to social media. This also just ties into the fact that kids under 16 are especially susceptible to dopamine because once they get addicted, they can't break out of that. And yeah, so social media is what keeps them occupied in their rooms. So, well, a lot of kids who are outside and they are playing, and they're with their friends, they say that they don't like that their friends are on social media. So even if you are outside playing, it doesn't really, they're still on their social media accounts, so it kind of cancels it out. That's all.
Thank you all for coming out. I'm Anna. Today I'm going to be arguing that social media is not suitable for kids under the age of 16 because first, ideally it's a way to build community, but in reality it can be used to hurt others. Second, peer influence hurts self-image and self-esteem. And third, the issue is cyberbullying. Let's begin. First of all, the positives of social media are in an ideal world where it's used to build community, share interests, and make friends. Now these are all good things that do happen, but I'm arguing that the harms it brings far outweigh these positives. Because in reality, like Claire said, uses aren't always so innocent. It can be used to bring others down for what they are or what they do and don't have, which means people change themselves to fit in, which leads to my second point, peer influence. During this time of adolescence, which is teenage years, teenagers are very impressionable. We strive to fit in and be just like everyone else, doing anything it takes to fit in, maybe doing things that they know are wrong along the way, such as liking bad posts or even making fun of someone else. Teens become their friends, losing self-value and individuality. Again, doing anything to make sure you aren't the odd one out. But what if you are the odd one out? Well, this leads to cyberbullying. The definition of cyberbullying is to seek harm, make fun of, or intimidate another person using electronic communication. This is a hard thing to stop because of the cyber wall between the bully and the victim. Since teens are so worried about what others think, this is a big issue, especially since the bully normally goes after their personal character. In reality, words do hurt, even if we don't want to admit that. Sometimes they hurt so bad that it causes anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, and even sometimes actual suicide. A study done at Oxford shows that cyberbullying raised suicide rates by 2.3 times. So this is not an issue to be taken lightly. But hopefully we can reduce these rates by not giving social media to younger kids. Today I argued that social media should not be given to children under the age of 16. Because one, it's ideally used to build community, but in reality, it can be used to hurt others. Two, peer influence hurts self-image and self-esteem. And three, the issue is cyberbullying. Thank you for listening.
Hello, thank you all for coming out. My name is Mackenzie. Today I'm going to be responding to my opponent Anna's points, which were ideal versus reality, peer influence, and cyberbullying. With that, let's begin. First of all, the ideal, obviously, is that social media will be good, and the reality is that it's not. My opponent said that the harms outweigh the goods of social media. Social media has dangers, but they all have solutions, with parent involvement and blogging or even having a private account. The reality of everything is that there are dangers, not just on social media. But does that mean just with some dangers on social media, we should get rid of such a beneficial medium? Second of all, my opponent stated, with peer influence, my opponent stated that as teens in the adolescence period, we are very impressionable. As a teen myself, I feel that that is not true. Exactly, because as teens we are trying to find our own personality that works for us. She also stated that teens can become their friends. I won't say that she's completely wrong, but she's not quite there. We become similar to our friends. We're not the exact copy, I guess. We are with the same personality and maybe actions, but with different, our own twist on it, I suppose. And because we can control and